Well, hi folks, welcome to our garden, Wednesday the 15th of June. It's about 10:15 at night and still nice and light. I'm actually sat down the bottom end of the garden. I normally start my video updates from the other end. This is where we have, let's say, a more wilder, looser area. We've got plenty of trees. And also, actually, what I like about this area is that the neighbours have got quite a lot of trees as well. Look at that tree line there. And we've got trees up on the main road, not too far away from us as well. As I say, this is the more sort of informal part of the garden. Had a little bit of a burn, just burning some old bits of cardboard and branches and things. Seating area in the corner there. We actually did this last year, and it's still a work in progress. It needs more development, but we just got some slabs down there and built some furniture out of pallets. It's one of the few places in the garden that's shaded in the morning because we're south facing here, which is good, but yeah, this is a nice shaded spot until it gets to a certain time, and then it's gone. So compost bins. So there are two things that you need for compost. You need what we call green materials and brown materials. Green materials are things that are nitrogen rich, so this is things like grass, veg clippings, cuttings from the garden, grass clippings, anything that's green really is good nitrogen. And then you need your browns. These are carbon rich materials, so paper, cardboard, dried leaves, ash is very good, paper, shredded letters, things like that, just to keep a really good balance. And then if it's really dry, water this as well, keep a little bit of moisture in it, and the worms and the other organisms will break it down into lovely compost. We've got two bins. That means I can turn this over. I normally turn the compost 3 times a year, which basically means I put it from this one into that one, and then I move it back and so on. And then wherever we are by early winter, I leave it there, and it does its thing. And in the case of last year's, we've actually used it all. This is empty now, so we've used it all on the garden. Try and have these, don't put them near your house, because you will get flies and things around them. That's perfectly normal. But don't sort of put them outside your kitchen door. But if you've got somewhere in the garden that gets quite a lot of sun, heat is definitely a good component in a compost heap. You can do cold composting. You can have it in an area of shade. It'll take longer to break down, but you can still do it. But if you can have it somewhere that gets at least sun for half the day, then that's definitely a good thing. Strawberries. These are a first year crop. I did a video on strawberries regarding, because these are a 4-year crop really, and I did a video a bit back, so look back on the Facebook page and you'll see what I mean by that. But despite these being a first year crop, we've had quite a few off them. It's not been too bad. I think we've had a bowl full so far, and we'll probably, there's about, I've counted 16 this morning on here, so but not that many for a family of 5. But as I say, first year crop, need a bit of patience with gardening. Sweet potatoes, first time I've grown them, so they're not like normal potatoes. They're a different family, actually, a different family of plants, and they grow as vines. So they still produce their potatoes, their tubers, under the ground, and they basically act like a vine. So the reason I've got these wigwams is because as they produce the foliage, hopefully we're just going to be able to tie them up to this. These are just made from some conifers that we cut down in the front garden, so very environmentally friendly. Under here, French beans, which we love. There are 4 plants, 1, 2, 3, 4. The netting is to keep the birds off while these are young, because we do have lots of pigeons around here and they do tend to like to nip at young tender leaves. I've added a bit of manure to that as well, which would be really good for them. The other plants you can see in there here are my brassicas. So this is things like cabbage, kale, broccoli, etc. And they're under the nets because of the cabbage whitefly. If you grow any of those crops in the UK, you need to net them. Otherwise the cabbage whites will come and lay their eggs and you'll have caterpillars eating your crop. That isn't one of these things where you might, if you don't net them up, you probably will. There's pretty much a 95% chance. So my advice would be, and I found out the hard way, always net up your brassicas. Next thing, onto our salad bed. Should have probably pulled the net back actually so you can see a little bit better, but in there we've got spinach, we've got lettuce, radish, spring onion, and this will all be done in about 6 weeks time. We'll have cropped off it, and then what we will do is this part of the garden will become too hot for growing things like lettuce and spinach particularly. They can go to seed when it gets too hot, so this lot will come out. We'll weed it because there's lots of we have a lot of oxalis that tends to grow in the vegetable beds. It's just a weed. It's got very pretty flowers, but it's a bit of a pain, so we'll clear that, and then we've got some sweet corn in the greenhouse which we'll be planting in this area because it probably gets the most sun, hence why we've got the greenhouse there. Clematis doing quite well. I'm not going to spend too much time on the pond. It's a couple of years old, this pond, but it needs some plants in there desperately. You can see I've put some barley straw in to try and get some oxygen in there, but we desperately need some pond plants to really bring that to life, so I'm not going to focus on that for too long. I've got a nice little sort of fence that I built from some of the bits of trees that we coppiced. That's rather nice. And this is a patio rose. I can't remember the variety, but I call it Nicky's rose because my wife saw it in the garden centre and she loved it and wanted it, so we've planted it here. It's not on a patio at all, but it's doing really well. And this particular bit of soil it's planted in is quite wet, heavy clay. That's generally what we're on here, so yeah, it's really happy. We've got some tomatoes. So these are a variety that do well outdoors, and these ones, I can't actually remember the name of them, but they're a cherry tomato, they're a bush tomato. That means you don't grow them tall up a cane, you don't need to pinch side shoots out, you just let them do their thing. And I've done these in hanging baskets a couple of years ago and they did really well, so hopefully in this border it's nice and sunny right in front of the greenhouse to do okay. Couple of sunflowers either end of this border, and then a couple of marigolds at the front, just to add a bit of colour and for a bit of companion planting. So I'll take you into the greenhouse. So these are my cordon tomatoes, the ones I grow in the greenhouse. Cordon just means that you grow them up a cane, you pinch out the side shoots. What you're looking for is you're looking for one long stem that just goes all the way up, and then when you get to the top, when they can't get any higher, you just nip the top out, and you start clearing foliage as well to ripen the tomatoes, and I'll do a video on that a bit later on in the year. Ideally with tomatoes you want at least a foot apart. I tend to do mine about 1.5 foot, nearly 2 foot. If this bed here was filled with tomatoes, it's 8 foot long, I would put 4 plants in here because you need to give them room. They're a hungry plant. And once they start to set the first truss, which is basically where that you get the first flowers on them, they normally, well, they always start at the bottom of the plant. They start to turn into tomatoes, and you see these little green mini tomatoes. That's the time to start feeding them. Might do something about that in a future video. Now, the sweet potatoes I was showing you outside that we grew, I'm also doing some in the greenhouse. As I said, this is how they're sort of traditionally done. So we'll see how they do. Pretty much growing them in the same way as the others. Slightly different support system for the foliage to go up, but we'll see how we get on. I've never grown sweet potatoes before, but we do love them. I mean, we buy so many of them, so if there's a way that I can grow them, then I'd love to, you know, rather than growing things just for the sake of it or because they're easy to grow, and figure out how to grow things that you actually eat, then yeah, top banana. These are the sweet corn that are going to be going out in the salad bed that I mentioned. These are the beetroot. You can't see because it's getting a bit dark now, but I actually, when I plant these, there's a little moat around these, and they're planted on a mound, because whilst they do need quite a lot of water, they don't like the base of the plant, where it goes into the soil, they don't like that to be wet. It can cause them to rot. So what I tend to find is if I just do them on a bit of a mound and just water this moat around them, it keeps the bottom of the plants dry, and it seems to work well, or it certainly has done for the last few years. The borders outside, these are mostly herbaceous perennials and they're starting to get great colour on them. So we've got things like the Dianthus here with a lovely sort of deep vivid red colour, the Campanula, which is one of my favourites. And in between that we've got annuals dotted. So we've got some Calendula here. There's quite a lot in this border still yet to flower and come up. So we've got Yarrow, Achillea here, and we've got dahlias in there, various things. Over to the other side, Salvia hot lips, beautiful plant. I'd recommend it. Flowers most of the season, pretty much from April right until the first frost, really, November, even into December. Amazing. This one, I know it's a part of the Salvia family, but I can't remember the name of it. Nice purple spires. Aquilegia is quite an early one, so this is flowered. It's starting to go past its best, but I'll leave those heads on because you want Aquilegia to drop seeds. They're not a true perennial. They'll seed and then flower in the second year. Geum, which I always love, it has this like bushy foliage at the bottom, and then it holds its flowers high above everything else. It's really nice. We've used it here. I don't know if you can see in the wild bit. We let this bit grow wild more or less behind the pond, but it's great if you're planting it with other stuff because you really see those flowers come through. We've got a border of Lobelia here, so we've just gone for one plant, but it'll be 3 different colours, purple, blue and white I think the flowers will be, and they're lovely. Just behind that we've got the garlic, carrots that we've sown in here. We've got chard, parsnips, beetroot, some more beetroot that we planted out earlier on. And I'm sorry, the camera keeps going blurry, I don't know why. Nice bit of colour, another Salvia hot lips. This is where the brassicas are going to go. So when we were looking under the netting earlier, and I was pointing them out to you, this will be netted over to keep the cabbage whites off, and they'll be planted into this space. The bit on the end there is probably where I'm going to put the a late salad crop. I did actually plant a courgette in there, and it died. And that's never happened to me before. Kept it watered and it just died within about 5 days. I have absolutely no idea why. Just goes to show. I've been gardening for a few years now, and there are still things that I just don't know. And then lastly, I'm just going to show you the potatoes. They're looking gorgeous. They've flowered already, and so I'm just waiting for the foliage to die back now. Once the foliage has died back or starting to die back is when you can start harvesting them. And these are grown in sacks rather than in the open ground, and you can just, when they're ready, you can empty the whole sack out and try and do a potato reveal a little bit later on in the season when these are ready. But the main thing with potatoes is don't be impatient, just give them plenty of time. Pretty much like most things in a garden, actually. It's definitely taught me patience. So listen, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the update. Look after yourselves, take care, and bye for now.